Prerna Foundation welcomes you to this dialogue on Springshed management in Bhutan. This dialogue is presented through the Living Landscape, Securing High Conservation Values in Southwestern Bhutan project supported by the International Climate Initiative, ICI. This panel discussion will take you through the concept of Springshed management in Bhutan and also cover the importance of water management practices of the past, present, and the future. It will also highlight the solution to protect and conserve the recharge areas for sustainable water management in mountainous regions. We hope you will find this session informative and educative.
Read some highlights from some reports. Bhutan has one of the highest per capita water resources availability in the world. That is, I think, a very good news for us. Main rivers of Bhutan are Amochu. We call it Amochu, but when it is in Phinsuling area, it's known as Torsa. That's how it's been known. We have Wangchu, Punasanchu. I think Punasanchu, when it reaches Hamozinka, it's known as Sunkosh. Then we have Mandichu and Drangnichu that merge at Manas Basin in Pangbang. They all drain into Brahmaputra Basin. It is also important to note that all rivers originate from Bhutan except Amochu, Kurichu, that originates from China, and one of the tributaries of Kolongchu from India. So this is very important because if it originates within our own sources, we can manage and we can, measure. That is very important. But interestingly, in many rural and urban places, we hear a lot about water shortages for irrigation, drinking, including drying up of sources. So what is really going on when we know that we have many perennial, rivers flowing down to the south? The other question is Springshed management a local solution to combat impacts of climate change on the water resources? So let's examine it. First, let me invite our three colleagues, Mr. Chambe from CNR, Mr. Nawang from Watershed Management Division or Department of Forest and Park Services, and we have Pasung Tokge from Tarana Field Office. Thank you for your time. If you could briefly introduce yourself with a focus on your engagement and contribution to this said topic, the spring management in Bhutan. Thank you. May I request to begin with from Chambe?
So, thank you so much for a very beautiful context. Myself, I'm Chambe. I'm teaching in the College of Natural Resources. In the college, I teach hydrology and integrated watershed. Springshed management was eye-opening for me for being a lecturer teaching in watershed management. So my concept of Springshed came with the understanding of watershed. So actually Springshed originates from watershed, but now getting deeper into the science, I feel like this is something which is very relevant in our situation, and that's how we started to inculcate those Springshed concept. And currently I'm teaching Springshed in my college along in parallel with watershed management, and also Tarayana. It was so good that they have accepted this proposal, and they also in turn had their own project which they were supposed to look in Springshed, and I had opportunity, and then this is how we have started, and we are looking forward to take this to another scale. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chambe. May I request Mr. Nawang?
Thank you very much. Myself, I'm Nawang Doji from Watershed Management Division under the Department of Forest and Park Services. And regarding the Springshed management concept in Bhutan, we had been working actually from early 2018. We had started with the Paro rolling revival site, and it was initiated with the collaboration from Esimot and Aquatam in India. And now we have around 5 to 6 pilot sites spread all across the country, and we are working on that. Thank you, Tasho.
Thank you. Can I request Pastopje?
My name is Pasang Topke. I work as a field officer since 2006. During my stay in Taraina Foundation, I've involved in various projects such as housing improvement, integrated bamboo-based project, food and nutrition, and water projects. We started the first water project intervention in 2006 at Rukha village on the Bhutan. Then after that, we started water project in Kenkar Kyo through Napa Phase 2 project in 2014. Now we have Iki project where I'm looking after 3 districts, Paro, Chuka, and Timpula. Lastly.
Thank you. Now, I know we have some guiding questions to, educate ourselves, but I also, put certain, context in what we are discussing here. So when I put a question to any of you, if you have something to add, please be free so. So let me begin with Nawang. I know that Watershed Management Division under the Department of Forest and Park Services was established in Ken Plan. And I also know the division has come up with a roadmap to guide the implementation of strategies to improve management of watersheds in the country. What is the progress as of now? And if possible, if you can share some lessons, engagement of key stakeholders, including community participation.
Yes, thank you, Ladasho. Yes, we had the water roadmap of Bhutan, which was developed in 2018-19, and the progress regarding the management of watershed, I would say we have around more than 10 integrated watershed management plans, which are already prepared, and the interventions are being carried out and implemented by the field offices. And also the water roadmap of Bhutan, it is right now we are also revising that, and it is coordinated by the Transformation Office, which is housed in the CBS office. And in that also we are taking into consideration of all the water sources that are in the drying stage, and also the Watershed Management Division is coming up with the section on how we can actually come up with the management of those drying water sources through the innovative financing mechanisms like PES, Payment for Ecosystem Services. And also we are coming up with the Forest Protection and Management Division under the department is also working to come up with the management of river-based materials, RBM. And coming to the community participation in the watershed management, we have the mandatory step that we follow while we develop the management plans, watershed management plans. So the community themselves, we follow the approach called logical framework analysis, in which we involve the communities and they themselves know that which are the priority issues and what are the interventions they need to overcome those issues. And also the community they themselves are, we take into consideration that the community themselves are more aware than us, what are the major issues in their watersheds, and also what activities they are wishing for. So we take into consideration community participation is one of the mandatory steps that we take into account. Thank you, Dash.
Thank you. If I may come back to Mr. Chambe, I'm very happy to meet you after many years. Before we really go down to the Springshed, can you educate us a difference between a watershed and Springshed, and why our local community should focus on the Springshed?
Dasho, indeed, I'm happy to meet you, Dasho. Watershed and Springshed, they are, I think it's very like offensive to say like it's very different, but then what we have understood so far is like in the mountainous context, so being a mountain which is guiding the flow of water, so merely focusing on the surface topology in watershed, like in watershed, we believe that a basin, like, okay, when water falls in one side of mountain, it is supposed to come to the lower mountain on same side. But however, in our mountain context, it's not only merely the surface topology which is guiding the water, but then once when water moves inside through the process of infiltration and percolation, it is a rock which is guiding the flow of water. So ultimately what we understood is like water from one watershed actually goes to another watershed. So in watershed also there's one concept, but this concept was not very popularized because the concept of watershed actually originates from those plain area, and it's very much applicable where the rocks are in a horizontal or in a plain area. But in our context, since it is mountainous, our rocks are inclined or they are moving in the various directions. So water which moves in one area actually goes to another area. So ani watershed na hama concept dula ani leak aquifer say bala leaky aquifer. So this is something which is not so much of focus because advances of water has started in this plain area. But today we live on the mountain, and this problem is a new problem for us. And with this, we demand to know more about leaky aquifer, and this is now coined as a term, Springshed sanila. So this is a pretty new concept. This concept is not even accepted in dictionary. But the only difference here is in Springshed, we are more focused on water itself than surface topology. Whereas in watershed, it is a surface topology which determine watershed. But in Springshed, it is a water they themselves determine where they will go. And ultimately, our focus here is spring, not a stream that we focus in watershed. And there are many differences that I will talk in that.
But is it fair to say when you talk about watershed, you are actually covering a larger area compared to when you talk about Springshed is a localized?
Dasho, I would actually, there are two, in terms of majority, if I talk, I would rather say that 2-3 watershed will come in one Springshed. But in some cases, there's two. In some cases, Springshed might be smaller than watershed, but in majority case, our 2 watershed will fall under one Springshed. So in watershed, we are talking from ridge to valley, but in Springshed, we are talking from valley to valley. So it goes to another watershed. So combination of 2-3 watershed actually will make one Springshed. Thank you. It's very good.
Thank you. Let me again go back to Nawang, since you are from the department where you really pay attention to watershed management in the country. I also know that in a short period of time, watershed management division has contributed a lot to the water resource management in Bhutan. I mean, that is quite admirable. Now, in your classification of watersheds, you defined like there's a pristine, there's a normal, there's a degraded or critical. Can you educate us actually how you categorize those watershed into those areas? And if it is critical, what is your next step or action or plan?
Thank you, Madam. Yes, it's true that Watershed Management Division is focusing on the classification and assessment and classification of watersheds in the country. So regarding the classification process, we firstly conduct the assessment of the watersheds. And to classify the watershed into we have 4 classes. One is normal or pristine, then degraded, and one is the critical. So to classify, we have there are criteria, water use scores, and we have around 28 something parameters which are taken into consideration. And finally, we come up with the score for each type of watershed. Then with the increasing percentage in the scores, if it goes above 50 or 60, then we consider it as critical watershed. And after assessing and classifying the watersheds, then we try to develop the watershed management plans for that either degraded or critical watersheds. For normal and pristine class, we usually don't do any interventions. So it is only for those watersheds which are degraded or critical. Just one point to clarify, if we are to declare watersheds as critical, it should be declared by the National Assembly session. So currently we don't have any critical watersheds, but we have few degraded watersheds for which the plans are prepared. Thank you, Tashu.
Of course, after scoring all those parameters, you classify them as a degraded or critical. If it is critical, I mean, it has to be declared by the body, decision-making body or parliamentary. But when it say it is a degraded, the making plan is one part, but what you require is action. And how do you actually, take this forward, or whom do you task, or how do you, convince or encourage decision makers to that the action is required there?
Last letter. Yes, I mentioned earlier, we do the community consultations, and through that we develop the plans. So based on the plans, what are the activities that we try to implement for particular time of the year or particular year? We try to insert our activities, like the activities from the management plan, into the other area-based management plans. For instance, we try to insert, if the activities are thought to be very critical for that watershed, then we try to insert them in, for instance, like forest management units, we have plans, FMUs, and also we have CFs, and we have like local forest area management plans.
Now, my understanding is once you have that plan, you would encourage the local governance or the local leaders to engage or insert into their local plan. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, we also collaborate with the Zongkak and the local governments, and also our field offices.
Very good. Thank you. Let me come to Tobge. I know Tarana Foundation has been working with the rural communities for many years, and the focus over here has been on community participation, empowerment, ownership of project activities. Now, in this Springshed management, Tarana has, seems that you have a lot of experience working with the communities. Can you share some, highlights or some challenges that you face involving communities, members, or for that matter, other sectors, support?
Lasla Dashul. For me, Springshed management concept is new in Bhutan and also in our communities. Some of the challenges that I particularly faced during the community participation, if I had to compare the past project of water interventions, where we used to provide the water construction materials and we construct the water reservoir tank. But in the case of Springshed management, it is an invisible science, so it was really challenging at the first to explain to the community, but gradually the community members were picking up. Moreover, we received many participants and support from community and also from the local leaders.
Now let me go to Chambe again. Now, I will just briefly touch on, I've just scanned through the report, mapping the hydrological recharge areas in southwestern Bhutan and assessing water quality of critical dry springs and lakes you and Karma Uden authored. I mean, I was quite impressed with that report. And let me actually highlight this one. Your team mapped the areas of 24 springs, 4 lakes, and 1 stream with GPS coordinates, and also identified recharge areas. Can you explain to us first, how did you identify the recharge areas, and in particular for our participants to explain this term that you use, the depression spring recharge? That is first. Secondly, when I look at those maps, the Google Maps, looks like many human activities are taking place in and around those recharge areas. And what message do you have for communities living around those areas, as well as other development partners like road or infrastructure?
Lasho, thank you so much. Firstly, I will start with the message, Lasho. Like I think I will start with very short narration. When I went with Tarana on my very different experience I had, people actually were waiting there to ask for a water tank or in turn some water pipe. This is good in the world. But we said like Tarana team, and we made sure that main problem currently is water sources drying up. Bhutan report na look theme wala water sources drying up. Say, chedi pipe di nosubong machi chura makamba bejansu wachin slapalu. Then suddenly their interest is changed. They say that machige nosub the pipe di nosub machiga. Sir and makamchi bezuna come jome slapde. At that instant we are able to capture them capture besuchila. This message we passed that no, that intervention we go for new water sources. These new water sources in turn will also dry up. Because main problem the dry jodo was not juvala. Then gachibe drying jomo, then we start with the recharge point. So far our protection is around the water sources like fencing chap. Immediately Bidista job that sir, Machilu Japtuchi number Rauchi Chamnisis and Sumela Machilu. And we told them that any area water methane lochi. There is one area where water actually enters. Ani the recharge paid and water actually comes out from discharge. We have been protecting sober discharge. That's in a research area they identify Beni. It will help the community in such a way that the watershed area guard protect. Well, it's very good if we can protect all the area, but why not if we can protect certain very important area ani research area they identify based watching. So in turn, if research area is clearly identified or delineated, then in turn it will help for our developmental activities nalu. Make sure that it doesn't fall under any research area nalu. Like it is based on like not based on research area concept. Discharge area is protected, but research area is not protected. So first and foremost is merely by understanding the research area. Now the question how you identify the research area, actually it's not me actually identifying the research area. I make sure that people understand where the research area is. Example, do anibe evachin shudi ani matra jumbola rasho. Then research area somewhere here la. No way we can protect in other side. Well, it's very good la other side protect beru. They will that to take out to be gumidi ani side because water is going in this way. Water spring is coming. Ani be ani area na lungachi protect bego be se. And it is generally the specific major the inclination major baby amchi angle stop biochin on a tick hume any area thing mark bibila da any area mark biminalu two things we can do la community labi we will make sure that you get water the water is water as long as there's water no soup pipe no soups they are not expecting their mindset has totally changed now they are waiting for water tank or something, but now they are more thinking of sustainable. Ansumchi, did I answer your question? This is thank you.
No, I mean, from your report and from those Google Maps, all these recharge areas are in the depression map, and you call it as a depression springs. Now, for a layman, for a local people to understand, that will be quite difficult. But in their own way, in the future, what kind of indications you want to give to other community members that how you can, on your own way, identify those areas immediately?
Hey, thank you, Larash. Thank you so much. There are different type of springs. The one that is very common here in Bhutan is depression, and the depression says because of depression, suddenly cut any rock nalu when rock is like this. So when there's sudden cut of rock like this and so spring comes out of here because of this depression. If it was not depressed, water would have gone like this. But today, because of depression like this, so spring is coming from here. We identify this as a depression. So how will we be able to tell whether it's depression or not? Is based on any rock. When there is sudden depression because of this, sudden cut when the we say depression. But in terms of hydrogeology mapping, we make sure that can't take spring the hard rock is soft because of contact. Suddenly meeting the hard rock, it's coming out. And the contact rings. They some type. That depression sudden cut later show. And even they're saying that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Let me go back to Nawang. Sorry. I'm sure in a couple of years, the division would have mapped all watersheds, hopefully including springsheds in the country. I mean, that is wishful. I'm thinking that is it possible that you will be doing that. But in due course, in terms of how would you propose or include in your local plans, or you convince your finance that you need budget? In other words, what I'm saying is, would your Springshed management be a part of the 13 plan proposal now? What are the chances, or how would you push or move this forward so that the studies that you, Tarena, and the team that have done it has some impact on the decision making and resource allocation for the local governance?
Yes, thank you very much. Firstly, to answer Dasho's question on the assessment of watersheds, actually the whole of Bhutan we have divided into 186 small watersheds. So the assessments are we have already completed Sijunila, and recently we have taken up the mapping of water sources all over Bhutan. So during that time, we have also covered the assessment of watersheds in those areas for that particular springs. And coming to the concept of Springshed management's implementation in Bhutan, I would say that it will come up as a program or activity in the 13th plan session, because like in Bhutan also there are many areas which faces the issue of drying water sources. As Dashu rightly mentioned in the opening address, Bhutan has one of the highest per capita availability of water in the world, but we have like many issues. For instance, we have Fangyul Keok in Wangdi, then Paro, Kenkar in Mongar, and there are many places like that. So in order to solve the issue of drying water sources, Springshed management concept seems like it is the solution. And regarding the budgetary part, we are actually all the projects, all the sites that we are currently undergoing, like it is funded from either through the projects or little amounts from RGOV, and mostly it is through project. So, for instance, if I were to say like the pilot sites that we have in Paro, it is funded currently. It's funded through GCF, Green Climate Fund, Sijunil. And also, like if we put the program in the 13th plan, also I think we may have to explore some donors through projects and such things.
As a follow-up, is it that you always want to look at the outside financing, or you wanted to look into our own sources like hydropower or green, all this, where there is, if I am not mistaken, there is a provision of plowback mechanism, in particularly from the hydropower. What are the actually scopes or chances that we get some financing to really? It's not going to be very expensive, to take care of your local spring management. It's not going to be big, but it will have a very strong impact on the people living around, particularly from the drinking and also, I guess, from the irrigation also.
Yes, Dr. Shaw. I already stated that we are also trying to come up with some of the financing mechanisms. Like we have a few CFs which are currently operational, but it is only for drinking water station, the payment for ecosystem services schemes. So we are trying to upscale those things. Like we are trying to bundle the benefits. For instance, we are also trying to look through the perspective of hydropower projects, paying the upscale communities for the management. So, but this would include a very long process. So we need to do thorough stakeholder consultations or research on how feasible it is. So Currently, the base payment ecosystem services for the drinking water it is successful. We have around 4 sites. So we have planned to upscale those and try to bundle the like we come up as a package and it plan the session.
Okay, thank you. Let me come to Chambe and Karma. In your report that you have actually published report, there are areas in the report that you all do not encourage, like planting trees around the recharge areas. There are also areas like groundwater exploration, which you actually share some estimates is not really encouraging not to explore. And I've also not seen a data on the microbial counts of your spring, water, like coliform actually, which is essential for qualifying for drinking water. Now, for me, I would say that if you plant local species in and around your watershed, I mean, that's a healthy way of really, putting nature-based solution to protect your water sources. That's how I look at it. That is one. Secondly, when it comes to groundwater, if I actually give an example, along the southern belt, like for example, in Gelfui area, if you look at this supply irrigation project, started way back from 80s, and still we are not able to fully function it because of the associated impacts of, you may call it climate change. Every year we have sediments washing away the sources. It's increasing every year, and we're not. Yeah. So I believe, why not go to ground? In the light of the changing climate, and you know very well that across the neighbor, people are depending on that actually, groundwater. So can you elaborate actually your views on this?
Last of the show, I mean, very valuable points. I really appreciate those. I think I'm really I appreciate in the sense like you have really gone deep into our report, Show. 3 points, like one about planting trees in the research area. So I'm also forester and I do have some concept of those, but then what I really feel based on my understanding of water and tree are just like a human being. If more human, we drink more water. So likewise, tree also, if there are more tree, they will drink more water, because conduction, we studied in biology that ascent of shape or translocation of shape is movement of water from root to like leaf and leaf transpiration. 3 types of transpiration take place, and stomatal transpiration is highest contributing. So ultimately, water actually is being taken by plant. Is needed in that area. So also, like people may debate in terms of any rainwater being tapped by a tree, but in turn that rainwater is also taken by tree themselves. Drinking water nadi, we need water in an aquifer. Aquifer na gunigi then water has to infiltrate, and then percolate baby ma aquifer hegola. But tree doesn't allow. Tree keep this in unsaturated zones. Yeah, thokara ja hogi log de hogi na thume. Ani bendigin. Our recommendation is plant grass like grass plant biochin. It will act like a tree in terms like a tree to tap the water, but they will not drink water. They dry. They are annual winter. So that's why our recommendation is grassland. I will explain in terms of why water sources are drying up Bhutan, because our alpine is being replaced by a tree. Tree line yata jodalu. Machi yagi pokturgi ani grassland gara replace pe. Penna be yunfula gi pangtang. I'm from Yunfula la. Ani gara shingsu la afforestation. Ani gi be now water no more drain to that lake in Yunfula. So lake is drying, and ADB project ki be daru shingsu ni se dinuro airport ki. No, this is very blunder that we are doing. So in that regard, local species beru, native species beru, it drinks water la, and it really takes water. The main problem the ngaji can landslide then is plantation. But main problem water going in I do not recommend la. And this is very difficult for people to understand. But like one example tani lamni example thende la lam community na. Why ngai chinalu ani shingi metui ani metu da ngatra chulu de table ko chutinena mindu sabero. That's true. So there's no tree species in the world which is capable of making water. So banana plant benu patsirang lu kung. There banana chuti lo mainland. Banana ki nana zimi chuti malitini. So more banana, more water is taking. Ani ki tegalu, I recommend not to plant on the richest area. Sani la chidi. In terms of groundwater taking nadi, groundwater mambe yagi groundwater thembachin wogi spring di kam jongla because aquifer is being shared la magi chuti chika beva magi spring themidi and groundwater ki bethendo ngachi ki Bhutan ki groundwater mi sila merugi but spring is the evidence that we have groundwater da malebe ngachi thingbu zumjinalu groundwater thembachin magi spring kam jongla because water table nalu umbola hani bendiki I don't recommend groundwater abstraction in Thimphu and Paro which is happening but south na khasami tare na gi bejui I very much recommend like in South Nadi, Kemi, and problem me because it's a plain area, alluvial plain, Indiana Thini, Indiana Babdalu, our water table also goes down like, along with. That was some city pata chukami reason the ma India chumam betimdalu, Yagi water table, the mata, Jodangachi, some city chukamiani. The mani South Nadi, no problem, Alabi, Juila Consilu. She is Domingo Chugi, Malitian, or Parola Tenigo Sunus, Parolo di Tinimio, but Ma South Tengola. I think this is good luck. We have already a very good chap in that. And equally from Gitashu Suminadi, well, is very good, directly indicator of pathogen, potential pathogen from human feces. But Machiki Datu di Mavela, because I would have very much interested to do Machani, the lab Naludi, colleague Bibda di water and hydrogen sulfate ki bottle chahiye, but it's very limited. I did buy very big and 12,000, 16,000 Nuru, 10 cham chomela. But I would very much happy to make this, do it in our lab, but machine laminar airflow, so I'm established shumbe majundi bemasuk. But future gidenledi, I would definitely try lani. Petty plate sechidula, petty film sechi, directly pour water. I was very much looking for that because of lockdown bay. My India Thomasula, but I know it's very important in terms of drinking directly loves me the Even Datogina the Gachi base, Chuachinani, Laluki, Ani Chutundal, Naume, Islamid, check Beni Vera. And this is there in my mind, but unfortunately, Chicham Stino, Talin, Haniben, Nachi, and issue men and Chutuna, Naume, that one can be Thank you.
Okay, anyway, thank you. You are in support of exploring groundwater along the southern foothills. But of course, when it comes to tree, I mean, the shrub or whatever plant, is a wide area that you can argue from different perspectives or governed by your own profession. But important part is, I think, we really need to look at our situation, and importantly, we need to really hear from the local leaders or like indigenous or traditional knowledge that they have been using it for many years. Having said that, let me come to Pasang. Now, as I said, Tarana has been working very closely with the local community members. And it's also important that the study that you have conducted with support from International Climate and Initiative of Germany, there's a lot of wealth of knowledge here. Now, in order to put that into practice, it's very important to connect with the local leaders, the importance of Springshed management. Now, if you can convince the local leaders, I'm sure that this will go into your local plan. And if it goes into the local plan, I'm definitely certain that the Department of Forest will support to build a case one. So, do you have any actually plans or ways to look forward so that the study conducted is being put into action from Tarana perspective?
Last show, during the assessment in the project site, we were able to convince the community gradually and even the local leaders to convince PSC. For the assessment conducted, we do have the intervention plans to turn into the action plan. Recently, we have been conducting community consultation and giving awareness on the Springshed management, where we receive a positive feedback and support from local leaders. That is Namisamila, very much important to include in LG plans.
Thank you. Now this probably view, I think any of you can actually come in. Now, in building with the line, I mean the statement that Chambe made with regard to plantation. If you really look at in this restoration areas, like be it a forest landscape restoration or ecosystem restoration system, we know that technically solutions are available, and it's about how you coordinate, how you collaborate and source the financing part. That is one part. And also, if you look at it now, people more and more they go for a nature-based solution, in terms of restoring, and that is particularly for the developed countries, in terms of accessing the water. Now, instead of desalination or treatment or something, they wanted to invest in this watershed. So, from your experience, from your field business, what do you think of the potential, like we have here, particularly in addressing this degraded watershed areas, and the drying up sources? How about if we explore such approaches in addressing our issues?
If I may now.
Yes.
Regarding the plantation, I would slightly disagree with what Chambe sir has mentioned. Yes, it is to some extent true that the plants need water and they absorb water also. But in the long run, if we are to sustainably manage the watershed and maintain the continuity of flow of springs, I would say that the plantation of trees or any other things would be better than the managing through grass plantations. For instance, it is only in the growing stage that the water requirement for the trees are very high. And if we compare the primary and the secondary forest, for primary forest, that is, the water absorption capacity will be very less compared to the secondary forest vegetation. And if we look through the pilot site management, which is being done at Lolingla, the site was raised by fire 3 times. If we look back to the time series, 1975, 1980, and recently it was in 2014. That total watershed was raised by fire. So it was because of that. Earlier there used to be around 15 small springs. So now we have done only to one last thriving springs. So looking through those experiences, I would say that the vegetation cover also is important, because it may lead like a misunderstanding to the general public, thinking that the extraction of resources or the like anything like forest resources, those decreased watershed may not contribute to the drying of water sources. So my submission is like, it is not really the trees that are using water, and infiltration trees are also helping. That's it, Latish. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said, this is an area that how you argue from your own angle. So, Chambe?
아니 나기딜라니 라가이 슈미디 다시 숭데바 restoration 세 나치 Bhutan 나도 restoration 비워진 that yunplagi example su judo zumbe ngachi our nature based solution would be cutting down a tree la and yunpul hema pangdan shing madela our nature base is hung chlipi phadi hema shing debe tun wala that's a solution for replanting la maginadi I would go for replantation but not afforestation la and shing meshelu shing tunidi is something that I'm against la but reforestation okay there was a tree earlier planting tree is no problem la khasla apela lu dashu suzamangi and trucks na lu ngajub dalu it was better than no tree earlier. What happens was chap ki chudi ma sona jonu wala the plantation baby shing to be chap no more drains to that lake la. So I said remove this catchment clear bay, let water to gather there singajuila. So ultimately what I mean to say is like restoration ki denedi we are trying to keep it as it was before, but recently Bhutan nishumbe ngagi and thesis hypothesis nadi forest cover has increased, water sources has dry up. This is big question la. So our restoration is removing la ngagi shing ani nature ki bemi dikhime la. Afforestation is something la which I'm against, but reforestation the goal la. I'm not against any tree la. Shingi be they are holding ani hemanga ikholeba la lushing be me this believe me. This because of that tree it's holding the rock la. But when we cut that tree root will decay and then it will release the stone. And stone tamdara magi water the block jobi chukam jongla. Kam jobi ni men direction change pe jongla. I do not recommend cutting tree also la, but not planting also la. This is what I feel la. Nature based solution degraded that degraded we have to see that it is degraded because of people plantation cutting tree, okay, then revive, or else it is degraded because of tree, then a nature-based solution. Our nature-based solution, Bhutan nature-based solution, Chilipi nature-based solution is very different la. In their case, Shinto Janva Himalaya, Machina Shingmato, Machi Meshal Shing to me the nature-based solution men la. This is what I'm thinking la.
Okay, let's keep this debate live, and okay, let's look into the science part and see where we will actually help our farming community. Now, probably we are coming down to the last part of our, if I'm not mistaken, of our discussion. Now, what I wanted to actually highlight is particularly this study that is a collective effort of Tarayana, CNR, Department of Forest, local communities. I mean, it is done very well actually in my assessment. Of course, it can be improved. There are some areas I feel that you need to add, so that it becomes more holistic, in terms of if you're going into a scientific world, you need more. But now you have that report, and in my view, I would really encourage the students, lecturers, young scientists to read, not only young scientists or students, but also the decision makers, the importance of taking care of your Springshed. But in many instances, the reports, once it's produced, people hardly read. But it is our responsibility to, share and disseminate. And do you have any plans like going out widely, saying that this is our finding and, why you need to pay attention to, and how, you do have any actually plans moving ahead? Like I'll seek views from Forest Department, from college, and from Tarayana too.
Thank you. Regarding the concept of Springshed, it is fairly new. Bhutan has adopted since it is only since 2018 we started working on that with the technical support from Asimut and the Ecuador in India. And the way forward is like we really need to develop the capacity for the field staffs who are working with the Department of Forest, and also like we should create mass awareness on how the spring revival works are being done and what are the advantages that these activities will have in future, especially in maintaining the security of water, drinking water, as well as for commercial purposes. And also we, what I think is from our point of view, like department's point of view, I think like we all should work collaboratively stationally. For instance, no one, somebody working in silos, it won't result really good stationally. So therefore we need to coordinate among ourselves and we need to carry forward this concept stationally. That's, thank you.
Like firstly, I think society now is very difficult. But last time once we got an opportunity to speak to an BBS, and I think it was very substantial input for communities that they have understood few of them. In future also, if we get an opportunity, I think my collaboration and opportunity funding support of Tarayana has actually broadened our perspective. With I think this, I see future success in Springshed with collaboration of Tarayana with the support from the community. So a way forward would be provided Tarayana gives me a opportunity, because this belongs to this is their property. So if they want me to publish, I think I would be so happy. But this will be more like a case study, not develop science. We don't do sampling here. Our sampling is based on need la community na. Chuga didi ngaji revive be. Hema bomi mi da chunku jo mi lapsh na cha ani benis. So this is more of purposive sampling we did. So it will be more of case study, and I am very much happy to make it well and science level nalu. Provided Tariana give those ani benigi pa ani la. And I'm really looking forward la that again Dashugan support Zumbe with this is possible la. And I really believe, and Tarana has really believed, and department has really believed this will benefit la. This is very localized solution in Melanga mountain gi. And it should plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Karma, you want to come in?
For the way forward, this report will be the basis to implement all the field activities related to Springshed management in the site the study was undertaken. We will also share the findings of this report with all the relevant stakeholders and policy makers so that together we can work to address water security issue in a more holistic and coordinated manner.
A really interesting session. And in fact, I learned a lot looking at the report and hearing from you all in this session. And in my own assessment, to combat climate change impacts at the local scale, particularly the Springshed management is one of the promising solutions that we have here. And in particular, it's not going to cost us much, but it will help a lot in terms of engaging, with the partners. So in order to make it really a good case, a successful story to upscale, it's really important to collaborate. I think we need to capitalize on the expertise. Expertise are all around us. With the institutes, with the academics, within the departments. So if we collaborate, if we coordinate well, we have our own solutions here. So if we have our own solutions, probably this is where we could help our farming community to fight climate change in the years to come. So with that note, I want to thank Tarayana Foundation, CNR, and Department of Forest, and particularly our WWF country program, through which the support is being financed by the German government through International Climate Initiative. So this is a wonderful beginning, and we have just started, and we have a long way to go. So I wish you all the best. So thank you.